the history of our groups, right, has not always been the most positive. I mean, one of the most significant criticisms, and I think rightful criticisms that people have that we've received, is that when Black Christians and Black people in general, who are made in the image of God, have struggled, have suffered, have been under the thumb of oppression, have been marginalized, Asian Americans and specifically Asian American Christians weren't there for them. And both of us come from collectivist backgrounds. And so when we say Asian American Christians and Black Christians, we associate ourselves with those in the past, even though we weren't the ones who were there to make the decisions. And I'm just curious what your thoughts on that might be as we start having conversations about how we can move forward. I guess in our next segment.
Yeah, man, this is something I'm eager to learn more from you and other folks in the Asian American community about this sort of history and relationship from your perspective. I remember growing up and being in high school in the 90s, right? And movies like Boys in the Hood or Don't Be a Menace came out, and there were these tropes about people of Asian descent owning, stores in Black communities, but not really being part of the Black community, having this antagonistic relationship, et cetera, et cetera. My personal experience was pretty diverse in high school. I had friends of Asian descent, but it wasn't like on the radar, right? We didn't really talk about it per se. We knew we were different and diverse and had different backgrounds, but it's not like I knew much about their culture or I felt like they knew much about mine. From my perspective, and I could absolutely be wrong, you know, if you think of like whiteness as concentric circles with sort of European whites in the center, and then because whiteness is inherently anti-Black, it creates this category of Blackness that they're against, tend to be in the outermost concentric circle, but you can still move closer to that center circle. You're never quite white, right? You never quite are part of that. But if you're light-skinned, if you're educated, et cetera, you can move closer to the center and then get the advantages and privileges of being closer to the center. And that's what I observed from afar, is that, when you come in to United States culture and society, you can choose you can choose whether to what degree you want to sort of assimilate or play the game and move closer to the center, or do you want to sort of stand with the marginalized? Now, for Black folks, especially darker skinned Black folks, there's only so far you can go, unless you're extremely talented, like, a LeBron James or something like that. But thankfully, he's maintained some solidarity with the Black community. But for other folks, especially who aren't of African descent, what I observed is like a lot of Asian folks who I knew, I don't know how to say it, but it's almost like trading up, right? Like if you associate with white people, adopt language and expectations, then, you get certain advantages, but you had no advantage by associating with Black people. So I'm not trying to be, I'm just telling you what I grew up in is like most of the folks I knew, there was an Asian group of, it might have been Korean folks, it might have been Japanese folks, but they hung out. We hung out too. So, it's like no shade, but it's like I could not see any way in. There was like no access for me, whether it was a language barrier or just like social networks. I was just like, cool, man, we're cool, but like, I would love to know you. I have no idea how to get to know you.
Man, I totally agree with that. Sociologists call that white adjacency. So those who benefit from being near whiteness, which, I mean, Asian Americans, because of our own immigrant experience and because of the racism that we experienced early on, our parents, I mean, my parents told me, because I'm second generation Korean American, my parents told me, hey, on Monday to Friday, do your best not to be Korean when you go to school, because you're going to get made fun of, you're going to get picked on, you're going to get bullied. And they would have me go play hockey. And I'm like, that is
Wow.
one of the ways I was colonized. Now I love hockey still, and I'm like, don't hold that
Yeah.
against me. I'm a hardcore Blackhawks and LA Kings fan. But
Oh,
I'm
that's
like,
what's up. I'm
yeah,
from near Chicago, so that's cool.